Welcome into an all-new edition of Daily Faceoff Live. It is Thursday, January 30th, and we are streaming live on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. Looking for your inbox questions, drop them in with the hashtag AskDFO. The show, as always, is a presentation of Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. And look who's back, Frank Seravalli, back to feeling like himself. What a sight.
Just feeling like a human again, man. I'm a long way from Tuesday, hospitalized with pneumonia, and it's been a wild 9 days. Sickest I've ever been in my life, but I'm so happy to feel like a human.
Yeah, everyone in the chat, happy to see you back as well. So with that in mind, Frank, let's get into the hockey talk. We have a Dominion Lending Center's poll question up right now that you can all have your say on over in the YouTube. Which name would you like to see the Utah Hockey Club go with? I know it's being decided by a fan vote, but we also have our nightcap for our friends at JP Wiser's, proud to be the official whiskey of the NHL, offering Canadian hockey fans a premium drink choice to enhance every game night experience across the country. JP Wiser's, the official whiskey of game night. And Frank, let's start with one of the more interesting results from last night. A nice bounce back for the New Jersey Devils. We talked about them over the course of the last couple of shows, and it's like, okay, no Jacob Markstrom, no Nico Hischier. You kind of had this 7-game run to get to the Four Nations break, and then hopefully you could get healthy coming out of it. But there had been some concerning signs with the Devils. The injuries certainly don't help. Only 4 wins in their last 10, but they get a big one, 5-0 over the Flyers last night, fueled by the Hughes brothers, combining for 4 points.
Yeah, and look, really impressive response. I love the way that they pushed back. They were pushed around by the Flyers a few nights ago. This is the third time those teams played in a 12-day span. And Sheldon Keefe had asked his players for more, and he got it. And I like that they also found a way to stick with the game itself. If you watch the first period, the Flyers actually controlled a fair bit of the play, had done a way better job getting in behind the Devils' defense. And the Devils they were patient. They were patient and they remained physical. And you get a 4-point night from the Hughes brothers. You get a shutout from Jake Allen. And all of a sudden, things start to feel a little bit different, because this is a team that for the last 6 weeks or so has been on a bit of a slide, has not inspired confidence in terms of a team that should be competing to be in contention to come out of the East, one going in the opposite direction. And wondering if a night like last night, yes, it's against the Flyers, but could be one of those turning points in a season that, hey, they showed something.
Yeah, a little bit of a rallying point. I agree with that. And listen, when you look at where they're sitting over in the Metropolitan Division, I don't think anyone's going to sit here and be like, oh, they're a threat to catch the Carolina Hurricanes. They're also 9 clear of the Columbus Blue Jackets. I know games in hand could make that look very different if Columbus were to go on a bit of a heater. But I go back to my original point of, you have, I think it's now 6 games until your Four Nations break. Just survive if you're New Jersey. You don't got to go 5-1. You don't have to go 4-2. But as long as you can just rack up a few wins, have a few more nights like they did last night against New Jersey. Jack Hughes getting up to a Hart Trophy superstar level again. He wasn't even on pace for 100 points going into that game last night. That will certainly help, but I think it's just survival mode for these next 6.
Yeah, but I think they also need to find the next wave. When it's not the Hughes brothers, who's going to be scoring for this team? That's the real question mark moving forward. And I'd love to see New Jersey go out and get a nice depth piece to add to their lineup. Hey, I'm not saying he's definitely going to, and we'll talk about him in a second, but like someone like a Brandon Saad would make some sense. Free, inexpensive to add, and someone that could provide you a boost in a position you desperately needed in.
Yeah, more on that in a second. I also wanted to give some love to Sidney Crosby last night, firing home the OT winner for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I mean, listen, you can talk about the Penguins being a dumpster fire. You can talk about how they're not an authentic, they don't have an authentic shot at making the playoffs. But one, there's no quit in Sidney Crosby. His 3rd OT winner of the season ties him for 4th most in the NHL. Only 3 players have scored more than that so far this year. And also, 20th season, it's about appreciating greatness. This was about as vintage as a Sidney Crosby goal as you'll get.
That, and to do it in a new environment too. I mean, this is the first glimpse, if you're a Utah Hockey Club fan, of Sidney Crosby in your building. The 43rd different venue that Sidney Crosby has scored a goal in his career, which is kind of a crazy number to think about. But for a guy who is a creature of habit, who gets to try something new last night against a new look team and a new city, new arena for him. Love the response. And look, I've kind of written off the Penguins for a while now. You're right. I don't have them as a team that's an authentic threat to make it all the way back and to be a playoff team this year. But I'm real curious to see what they do at the deadline, because every time you watch Sidney Crosby, it's a reminder that there's still plenty left in the tank. And if they could just find the right support pieces, you think about the Washington Capitals and the resurgence that they've had. Why couldn't that have been the Pittsburgh Penguins?
Good drafting would be the difference between those two, Frank.
Draft picks to draft with. Like, that's how you draft well, is by having picks.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's keep cruising along here. Another team who suffered a tough loss last night was the LA Kings. It was the return of Doughty. Everybody's feeling good, and then the Kings come out basically about as flat as you can. Outshot 20-8 in the first period by the Florida Panthers, en route to a 3-0 loss. 3-6-1 in their last 10 games. And there are a bunch of concerning signs here. If you want me to give you some of the numbers, with just one win in their last 5, they've been outscored 10-5 at even strength in those games in the month of January. And this is going to ultimately lead to me asking you a bigger, more philosophical question about the LA Kings. But this month, they're 13th in shots per 60 at 5-on-5. They're top 10 in expected goals for at 5-on-5, but they're third worst in actual goals, third worst in shooting percentage as well. Is this bad luck? Is this just a natural bit of regression after their hot start to the year? Or is this a team that Rob Blake has to look at and go, I need to find a way to add scoring?
I think the answer to a lot of those questions is yes. I think this is a team that has had a significant regression from their hot start to the year, and probably to be expected. I think the Kings are a good team, but a flawed team. And I think they're a team that's not in the cup contender category, but is in the, hey, this should be a playoff team mix. And at the same time, I think the LA Kings front office should absolutely be asking themselves, how can we find a way to improve this group and add some scoring? Because they've got a pretty stout defense core. And especially now with Doughty back, that's 9 defensemen on their roster. And Brandt Clarke was the guy that was the odd man out on Wednesday night. But I think there's an interesting mix as well with the age of a lot of these players. They've got a bunch of older guys led by Anze Kopitar, and he's, still one of the class players of the NHL and has had an unbelievable season. And then there's a whole bunch of guys that are, in that 25, 24 age range. That what's the mix of this team moving forward? Once you get to the other side of Anze Kopitar leading the LA Kings, who's going to be the person carrying the mantle for them? And that's the big question that I think needs to be answered.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. It's a young core, and hey, not to be putting on my Steven Ellis hat or anything, but you look at that prospect pool, and a couple of years ago, you were sitting there going, whoa, Byfield could be a star. Alex Turcotte was another name. I mean, we can talk about Brandt Clarke in a second as well, but there were a lot of pieces coming up through their pipeline that you were like, they're going to be littered with star players in a couple of years, and some of them haven't panned out. You can talk about an Arthur Kaliev as well. As
most of them haven't panned out.
Yeah, they took a shot on Elias Anderson. That didn't work out. Like, a lot of them haven't worked. On Brandt Clarke, healthy scratched last night. The rumblings, the trade talk, whatever you want to call it. Is it much to do about nothing?
I think so. I haven't heard his name authentically in the mix, and one healthy scratch does not make you a trade candidate.
Yeah, I mean, if you're moving on from a 20-year-old D-man who's shown he has that much talent in his short career, I know there's been some growing pains here, but development is not a flat line. You got to live through some of the valleys there if you want to see the peaks of, again, a 21-year-old who's now racked up 47 games in the NHL and been asked to do a lot when Doughty was out of the lineup. Frank, let's continue along on the transaction front. Brandon Saad, a bit of a surprising move yesterday coming down, that his contract was being mutually terminated. The reports are, hey, no ill will between him and the Blues. He's just sitting there going, I'll pass on the remaining $5.4 million of my contract so that I can just keep being an NHLer. How surprised were you when this came down? It's not like, it actually, I will say, it's a little bit unprecedented to see a guy pass on that much money.
It's not unprecedented, but it's a bold move because I think a lot of people look at Brandon Saad's game this year and see that this is a player that's clearly on the decline. And so to walk away from the guaranteed money, yes, he's earned a bit, and I think he's going to be completely financially fine, which is obviously part of the motivation to make a move such as this one. I think he's going to be hard pressed to ultimately make the 5.4 million back over time. We'll see. We've seen other players bet on themselves. But the point is, you can't get back to that level unless you get an opportunity, and you're not going to get one in the AHL. So they had been trying to trade him for a span of months, hadn't found any suitors, and really were out of other options, needed to make something happen, wanted to open up a lineup spot for others, and decided to make this move to put him on waivers and send him to the AHL. Now the big question with Brandon Saad is where makes sense. And from the second this mutual termination was reported, the first team I thought of was the Vegas Golden Knights. They make more sense to me than just about anyone else. I think they've wanted to add some depth scoring punch. I think to be able to do it without giving up any roster pieces and offer, very little up in terms of salary on their cap, it just makes a lot of sense. Um, but they're not alone. I just see Vegas offering something unique in that, unlike maybe some other teams that are in the mix, at least with Vegas, with the success that they've had, that you can sell to a free agent, hey, come here and we'll go on a deep run. And it's pretty easy to kind of take their word for it, given how well they've played when it comes to the postseason. So I would have Vegas on the list. I would include Toronto, New Jersey. I don't think you can formally write off Colorado or Dallas, but Vegas to me is the one team that I think that really stands out.
Had a really nice run in Colorado back in 2020, 2021, scoring 15 goals in just 44 games. A lot of people jumping to make the Stan Bowman connection with Edmonton. Frank, my take on that is I know Edmonton's known as the island of misfit toys here, where everyone goes to try resurrect their careers. You have a Jeff Skinner, a Corey Perry. It just
he's the last thing they need.
I agree.
He's the last thing they need. And if everyone's healthy, if I'm him, I'm not even certain I'm in that lineup, to be honest.
Yeah, and that's where I come out on that as well. Brandon Saad coming off a 26-goal season, 32 years old. There is reason to believe he maybe still has something left in the tank. A native of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is my tie into our deadline countdown article today about Penguins defenseman Marcus Pettersson. Matt Larkin taking a look at a handful of teams who could maybe be in the mix. He listed 5: the Wings, the Panthers, the Kings, the Canucks, and the Winnipeg Jets. He is the kind of lone pending UFA that would get the Penguins a reasonable return. Frank, he's pretty high on your trade targets board as well. What do you make of the market for Pettersson? What do you make of this list? And is there anyone else you'd include as being in the mix?
Well, he's the highest value piece that the Penguins have that they're possibly going to move on from. And I think the key number one priority for Kyle Dubas between now and March 7th should be trying to maximize the return on Pettersson. I think on a true championship caliber team, he's probably a 5. On a team with less depth, he's a 4. And he's someone that, for the most part, is pretty steady. He's not going to excite you or wow you in too many different categories, but he's someone that can skate and can play. So a team that I really think, just from a pure stylistic fit and perspective, think makes a lot of sense is the Florida Panthers. That team is just not as good as the team that we saw win the Stanley Cup last year. And it's no shock. Losing Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Brandon Montour, it's hard to replace those guys, and they've yet to do it. So I think from a fit standpoint, Florida makes sense. I just don't know if they're going to be able to grab the assets and the cap space necessary to be able to make a deal like that happen. Another team that I'd like to see Pettersson on is the Winnipeg Jets. I think we've talked pretty openly about their over-reliance recently on Connor Hellebuck. They've got the scoring, but they haven't been able to defend quite well enough. And if he could help with that, I think Pettersson in Winnipeg is a good fit. I don't see him as a fit in Vancouver. I don't think he moves the puck well enough for what they're trying to do. And everyone's wanted to draw the connection of, oh, hey, Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin, they had him in Pittsburgh. This would be a guy that makes a ton of sense in Van. if they wanted to do that, they could have done this deal months ago. They could have done this deal last year. So I'm not certain that that's necessarily a fit. And I just think Florida, he could help put that team back in the contender category.
Yeah, and I mean, he's not going to cost you a first round pick, which I think helps in the case of Florida. But granted, they don't have a first, second, or third round pick in the 2025 draft. So they may have to get creative, or Pittsburgh would have to be willing to take a pick a little bit longer or a little bit later down the line.
Something one of my favorite lines going, Panthers GM Bill Zito, he likes to say, I'm shopping at Gucci on a Walmart budget.
And he really is. Hey, he's got an extra fourth and an extra fifth rounder that he can toss around this year at the deadline. But hey, that's kind of all they needed last year to go get Vladimir Tarasenko. Although I know there were some different circumstances there with the no trade clause. Frank, let's move along to our big segment for the day. It's the Coach's Room, and it's brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian owned and operated. You can check out their large selection of Canadian lab-grown diamonds and mine diamonds by visiting them online. You can also apply for the Charm Diamond Flexity card and get approved for no interest financing on your purchase in minutes. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com. Always a pleasure to welcome our friend Jon Goyens in for the Coach's Room. And today we're going out west and focusing on the Calgary Flames, one of the more surprising stories in the NHL this season. And hey, at first it was just a hot start. Now we're at game 50 and they are right in the playoff mix out west. I want to start by, I guess, maybe going back to the beginning of the year a little bit when we talked about this Flames team, and they were getting wins, but they weren't defending particularly well at 5-on-5. As the year's gone on, they've gotten better at that. What are some things that have stood out to you in the defensive side of their game?
Really, they figured out a way to defend the slot in a multitude of ways. They're defending the slot off the rush. They were giving up that breakdown that I did exactly 3 months to the day. It was October 30th. I talked about they were just too easy off the rush against. So they are near the top of the league in odd man rushes against. Not giving up. They've reduced the time in their zone. They're defending overall entries near the top of the league. They're giving up near the top of the league the least amount of goals off the rush, and total goals from the slot against. They're near the top of the league. And how are they doing that? Most of it comes in transition, but after the transition, and that's where 5-on-5 play sometimes is disconnected. That neutral zone should connect how you play in the offensive zone a lot of times and how you also are set up to defend. And that area is very much more connected from the transition defensively into the D zone. And we're going to see the clips of them really committing to slot defense throughout these clips. Again, this isn't sexy hockey. This isn't, Sports Center top 10 type of stuff, but this is the stuff that is necessary for your team to progress and defend your lack of scoring, which is Calgary's case. So let's fire up these clips. So we're going to see here, it looks like a 1-3-1, but it isn't. It's just their D2 gapped up. And what do is they squeeze your kickout options by skating forward, and then they transition the other way. They're not guessing. They're not disconnected. I know it looks like a 1-3-1, but it's actually a wide 1-2-2. And that D then just steps up on your option, on your middle option. And then there are 5 guys inside dots. Again, here's your wide 1-2-2, and they're just sitting on all your options. Pionk, what's he going to do with it? He kicks it out. But again, now it's a 2 versus 5 rush. Everything dies on the outside. So here, there was a chance against, and this is one of those holy shit moments. I turned it over, right? Poke check, but watch how quickly they react. And Pospisil, who's the guy who turns it over, is the guy that denies the east-west pass. Earlier in the year, a guy like that would have gone for a skate. Now, surf when you can. When you have numbers and support, skate forward to defend, and nobody's getting extended. And again, now they outnumber you offensively. So here, Winnipeg goes to a quick transition, fire drill. Like this is, they've been on too long, but what do? Fire drill with details. It's knowing where the hell do I go on a line change. And it's crazy to say there's a lot of teams that still don't work on that. A tag up, forcing you. There's 3 guys at the blue line. They're forcing you into thinking you have east-west plays available at will. And here, the great clip of twice, communication and reload. Watch, bad bounce, Watch right here. Communication and reload. They're not giving up those odd man, easy entries. They're reloading. They're above. And when they can't kill the play early, there are 5 guys in the slot as quickly as possible.
John, just watching the clips, this team seems like they're more in unison than others. Is that fair to say?
They are, and it's crazy to say line changes. We talk about, the Scotty Bowmans of the world, Ken Hitchcocks. You go down the line changes happen all the time. As you guys know, in broadcasting, we got the awesome view from up top, especially at the Bell Center. The amount of teams that guys come on the ice and it's like they don't know where to go or what area they should defend it is astronomical. But right there, it's charging, it's taking away time and space, and when in doubt, just hold the interior.
So who would you say is most responsible for this team being in the hunt at this juncture?
It's the big bad wolf. It's the big bad wolf. It's Dustin Wolf. I mean, he did what he needed to do at the American Hockey League. I know it's a bit of tongue in cheek because he is one of the smaller goalies in the National Hockey League, calling him the big bad wolf. But the reality is this kid's been outstanding. 16 of his 18 wins. His save percentage has been .917 or higher. He's got 2 shutouts in that stretch. He's been on fire. And again, not a goalie expert, but working with enough NHL guys, you're doing I'm doing a lot of shooting clinics. You got to figure out ways to beat guys, and nobody's going to blame this guy for making himself look smaller. Overuse of the RVH. He's not getting beat from bad angles. He makes a lot of great reads and being able to be on his feet as long as possible and challenge at the right times. So as we fire this up, we'll see how Dustin Wolf is able to accomplish through tracking his sight lines that he goes out and sees, beating passes on his feet, and making a lot of square saves. And when in doubt, the first 2 clips, you'll see his flexibility that has me wanting to go to a yoga class sometime soon. He gets across here. He tracks through traffic. Watch this save versus LA. Clapper from the point, and look at, he's already got eyes, and right away splits like, I'm in pain right here. So now flank, look at him track that puck, and then he's square, and he tracked it on his feet. He goes down when he needs to. He's in a soft stance, which means he's tall, so he can find that sight line. Watch on his feet. We know a lot of goalies from those angles are already down. Sight line over his own defenseman, square. Slot play through the trapezoid. Pushes from the post out, square, no rebound. When there are rebounds, watch how quickly he reacts to his feet and then back down. Here against Strome in Anaheim, quick save. And again, not the biggest guy, but able to use his right leg to extend. Watch this play by Ehlers. He's not even looking at Dustin Wolf. Dustin Wolf's not buying what he's selling. And then the east-west pass here on a 2-on-1. Again, on his feet, able to track with Jake Neighbors. And right here, LA comes in with speed and the old school Kirk McLean, kind of kick save, standing up. That's not something we see very often. He is a goalie that is a great example of making saves and not blocking pucks. He plays the position to his strengths of abilities and to read the play, and doesn't do it based on percentages or he's overtly trying to make up for the lack of height that was probably working against him as he was coming up through the ranks.
All right, so I'm going to put you on the spot real quick because you've seen Lane Hudson a ton. Obviously, Macklin Celebrini, Matvei Michkov, all in the conversation. Where would Dustin Wolf be on your Calder Trophy ballot?
So this is after Jakub Dobish? No, I'm just kidding. I would put him top 5. If Calgary can make the playoffs,
I need better than that. You got to give me.
You want to need better than that?
1, 2, or 3.
3.
Okay. So you got Celebrini 1 or Hudson 1?
I'm going to go Hudson because I didn't think he was going to be able to transition that quickly on defense and do what he's been doing. And he doesn't get knocked out of games. He just doesn't. And Celebrini is awesome, but I'm going with Lane Hudson.
Very interesting. Celebrini currently the odds-on favorite, followed by Hudson, followed by Dustin Wolf. John, as always, appreciate your time. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, guys.
Poll question results for our friends at Dominion Lending Centers. Is your mortgage up for renewal? Lock in the best rates by speaking with one of their mortgage experts. Visit dominionlending.ca. Frank, the poll question results, and our question, by the way, was which one of the three names would you like to see win the fan vote out in Utah? The three options are just keep it Utah Hockey Club, Utah Mammoth, or Utah Wasatch, which is the mountain range in Utah. If people don't really know where that word is coming from. Frank, you see the results here. Mammoth won in our YouTube by a mammoth landslide as well. What do you say?
I'm going Wasatch, just because it's different, it's local, and it sounds like they've taken the assets that were part of the Utah Yeti branding and have applied them to the Wasatch. So,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, so it's a mythical creature, right? And so I like the idea of something unique, different, and hyper local. Like if the locals are proud of it and that's what they want to talk about it, like I'm all for it.
I actually have Mammoth third on my list. I think it's a little bit too like NHL 25 create a team-ish. Like you pick from a list and it's like, okay, Mammoth sounds cool. Like I don't mind keeping it Utah Hockey Club as well. I think that is unique and it's something that you don't really
like it's not cheesy, but it's like it's so not hockey.
Fair. That's fair. I'm kind of in on Wasatch too. I heard you today with Pete Blackburn on a new episode of the DFO Rundown, which people can find wherever they get their podcast from. And you made a similar case. And I was kind of like, yeah, you know what? Let's be a little bit different. Let's be quirky. Let's be weird. I don't mind that at all.
If you have to explain it, like that's okay. It doesn't mean it sucks. And let's see what the branding looks like, though. I want to see whatever the Yeti part was supposed to look like.
Yeah. Cody is in with a question for us. Is making the playoffs a good thing for Calgary in terms of their long-term outlook? Here is the case I will make for making the playoffs being good for the Flames. You have to give your first-round pick in one of the next two drafts to the Montreal Canadiens. So rip the Band-Aid off. They already have two other first-rounders this year from New Jersey and Florida. You're going to get a couple pieces in the cupboard. Make the playoffs this year. Who cares where your pick is going to be? Get some big game experience for some of these young guys. And then next year, again, there would have been a chance. What if that pick is 7th next year and you have to give it to Montreal? Like, give the pick away this year, be a playoff team, enjoy the fun ride. Next year, who knows what'll happen?
I'm with you. I don't see any harm in making it. They've worked this hard this year. And beyond that, look at what we just talked about with Dustin Wolf and the way that they've played. What if he's going to drag them in all these years moving forward? Like, the chances are that he just has a Calder level year and then falls off is probably pretty slim. If anything, I think they have to start wrapping their brains around trying to add to this group with pieces that fit their age scheme to try and be more aggressive, to then go from being in that 8th to 12th place range to like the 5th to 8th place range.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd say too is if I'm that front office and Craig Conroy, I look at Connor Zary pending RFA. I look at Matt Coronado and I go, hey, if these are the guys you want to build around, sign them long term. You could have north of $40 million in cap space, and the cap should just keep shooting up. Sign both those guys, say whatever you want for 8 years. We will give it to you. You are a part of our future, and then reap the benefits of those guys being cheap when you are hopefully a Stanley Cup contender in 3-4 years. We got to keep cruising along. Let's go to our daily bets for Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Couple of plays today after the Leafs let me down yesterday. I like the Lightning on the puck line tonight. The LA Kings have been a pretty bad road team this year, 11-18 straight up. Tampa Bay, a very good home team. LA struggling. Tampa Bay lost 2 in a row as well. They haven't been great, but still, I like Tampa as the more consistent home team here, plus 180 on the puck line. And a little same gamer, Mikko Rantanen will score his first goal as a Cane tonight, and it will fuel the Canes to a big win over the Hawks. Give me Rantanen shots, Rantanen goal, Canes puck line at plus 240. And that brings us to garbage time, Frank. Last night, Dmitry Kulikov became the 406th player in NHL history to play 1,000 regular season games. And you and I talk about this a lot on the show. We love guys who get to 1,000 games the hard way, not a superstar, not a guy who's with one organization. 8 teams. He's actually changed teams 8 different times as well. Now that he's back in Florida, 16 seasons. Again, a guy who never even has an easy night, you could say, with the block shots and all of that. Him getting to 1,000 games is very impressive.
It is, and just one of those guys that has stuck with it. Look, there's no easy path to 1,000 games. He's done it without a lot of fanfare. Someone that I think has been relied on in bigger roles than we probably even have imagined over the years, and for some important teams at that. So Kulikov definitely deserves some credit for just sticking with it and adapting, because he's changed a lot over the years too.
Yeah. So there you go. That is a wrap on the show. Before we leave today, wanted to send along our condolences to everyone in Ottawa who knew and had the pleasure of working with Sean Simpson, including our very own Brent Wallace and Jason York, everyone at Coming In Hot. Sean was a part of that show a few months ago, and his passing definitely hits pretty hard. So our condolences to Sean's family and everyone who worked with him out in Ottawa. That is a wrap on today's edition of the show. We'll be back tomorrow at noon Eastern. We'll chat with you then. What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you're going to want to hit the subscribe button to not miss any of our content, from daily live shows with Frank Seravalli to analysis from former NHLers to exclusive interviews with some of the biggest names in the hockey world on Frankly Speaking. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with everything going on in the hockey world.